Karen thought she was protecting the neighborhood when she reported my family to the police for suspicious behavior because we kept to ourselves, didn't show up to HOA parties, and installed security cameras. She whispered to neighbors that we might be up to something dangerous. But when the cops showed up at my door and saw who I really was, everything changed because I'm a federal agent, and I'd already been watching her too. Ever had someone make assumptions about you just because of how you look or live? Smash subscribe and drop your country or city in the comments. I feature the most loyal viewers in every news story. My name is James Walker, and when I moved into Willow Hills with my wife Nia and our twin boys, Ethan and Eli, I wanted peace. I had spent the last 15 years working for the FBI in domestic counterterrorism and finally transferred to a quieter regional division so I could be close to my family, be part of my sons' lives, and maybe learn what a normal weekend felt like. We bought a modest but solid corner lot home at the edge of a picturesque HOA neighborhood. Quiet lawns, perfectly trimmed hedges, and just enough distance between houses to breathe. We liked our privacy. We weren't rude. We waved when waved to, smiled at the neighbors, but we didn't go out of our way to insert ourselves. I didn't mention my job to anyone. I never do. It's a rule, not paranoia. You don't broadcast federal work unless you want trouble. But in HOA land, not joining the neighborhood potluck was apparently a sin. And nobody took it harder than Karen, the HOA president and unofficial queen of neighborly drama. From the day she saw our moving truck, Karen watched us with a blend of suspicion and entitlement. The first friendly chat came just 2 days in. She stood on the sidewalk with a clipboard and that stretched thin smile that never reached her eyes, and asked why we hadn't submitted a fence request yet. Even though our fence had been pre-approved and built under county zoning before the purchase closed, when I pointed that out, she changed tactics, asking about our security cameras, claiming they might violate community privacy guidelines. I told her politely that we had every right to secure our home. That's when it started. The notes in the mailbox. First about trash bins left out too long, then about the aggressive look of our black SUV. Then the kids' play gear being military-themed. Our boys liked to play Nerf battles in the yard, dressed in little camo sets, pretending to be explorers or rescue agents. Karen called it tactical behavior. I shrugged it off at first. I'd dealt with worse. But one Saturday evening I heard the doorbell ring and saw 2 patrol cars parked outside. Lights on, no sirens. My heart didn't race. I'd dealt with this before. I opened the door calmly and stepped out, my badge in hand. The officer, a young guy with tension in his shoulders, started to explain there had been an anonymous call about suspicious activity and potential surveillance equipment on the property. I raised an eyebrow. You mean our ring cameras and a trampoline? He gave me a nervous chuckle. I handed him my credentials. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Counterterrorism Division. His partner, standing off to the side, recognized the name. He nodded and said, "Sir, you're good." They apologized and left. But now it was personal. My boys had watched the whole thing from the window, faces tight with confusion. My wife had tears in her eyes, not out of fear, but fury. That night we had a long talk about Karen, about the harassment, the coded language, the fact that we were the only black family on our street and the only one receiving these concerns. I made a decision. I wasn't just going to endure it, I was going to document it. Every letter, every comment, every walk-by photo she tried to sneak over the fence. I installed more cameras not to provoke her, but to legally record everything. I pulled public HOA complaint logs and found that Karen had a long history of targeting non-conforming residents, mostly new families, mixed households, and people who didn't fall in line. One neighbor, an elderly Korean widow, had been fined for hanging a wind chime. Another, a Hispanic family, had received threats over a cultural flag on their porch. I started a file, not a case, not yet, but a record. I'm trained to see patterns, and Karen's were clear. But then she escalated. A week after the police visit, I received an HOA violation citing my unknown vehicles of interest in the driveway and claiming our home exhibited unwelcoming surveillance behavior. It was all baseless, but it was a clue. Karen was trying to build a case to turn the board against us, or worse, force us to move. She didn't realize I'd faced far worse tactics from real threats. I smiled, updated my file, and waited. Because every step she took brought her closer to a line she couldn't uncross. And that line came when she filed an official community safety complaint directly to the county, labeling my home as a potential surveillance hub and suggesting that my children's play patterns resembled paramilitary youth behavior. She included grainy photos of Ethan and Eli playing with water guns in the backyard, and even cited my wife's late-night shifts as unusual traffic patterns that crossed every line. I requested the documents through FOIA and received copies signed with her full name. She hadn't even tried to hide it. That's when I took everything I had. The video of her pointing a phone camera over our fence, the audio of her accusing my wife of deliberate community distancing, the drone footage she deployed from her grandson's DJI account. The letters the HOA complaint records the interviews with neighbors, who had also been mistreated, and compiled it into a comprehensive file labeled Community Harassment, Willow Hills. I scheduled a formal HOA board hearing and sent a copy of the file to the State HOA Oversight Office, see my FBI office's legal team. It's not to flex authority, but to make clear this was moving beyond petty neighborhood politics. The board meeting was a spectacle. I arrived in a plain gray suit, my badge clipped to my belt in plain sight, not as a weapon, but as a signal. Nia stood with me. Several neighbors we barely knew came too, because once word got out that we were the family Karen had reported, the tide shifted. People who'd been afraid to speak suddenly had a voice. I didn't raise mine, simply presented the facts. Karen had filed false police reports, used coded racial language in formal documents, weaponized HOA bylaws to target specific households, and created an atmosphere of paranoia and discrimination. When I showed the security footage of her instructing her teenage grandson to fly a drone over our property, the board gasped. She claimed she was protecting the neighborhood, but by then, it was too late. The vote was unanimous. Karen was stripped of her position, banned from holding any HOA office for life, and issued a formal cease and desist from the board. But I wasn't finished. I filed a civil complaint against her for harassment, defamation, and invasion of privacy. With my evidence, the court fast-tracked the case. She settled privately, within weeks agreeing to pay damages and issue a public apology to my family. That letter was read aloud at the next HOA meeting, with her in tears as she stood beside it, unable to look at anyone. She put her house up for sale 3 months later. The neighborhood had changed. The energy shifted. People started waving more. Conversations at the mailbox grew friendlier. The new HOA president, a retired black firefighter named Donnie, came to our door with a pie and a thank you card signed by 12 other residents. My kids, they run through the yard freely now. Their water battles are louder, messier, and met with laughter, not binoculars. Nia gardens in peace. And me. Sit on the porch sometimes, sipping tea, watching the breeze move through the trees. Knowing that silence doesn't mean weakness, and that when you protect your family with truth and patience, even the loudest Karen has to face justice. Because the real badge isn't on your belt. It's how you live and who you stand for when the world turns sideways.